Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into this show today. Now, today's episode, we're talking about cycling your credit limit, what it means, how it works, and most importantly, is it actually that upsetting and a red flag to the banks and the issuers or not? So, of course, if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now, what do we mean by the term cycling your credit limit? Well, we've done other videos on this, but a quick summary of it is, the lender, the bank behind giving you the credit card or the issuer, they're going to set a credit limit. So, if we just say your credit limit is $1,000, that's obviously a revolving line of credit, meaning if you make a $100 purchase, then you'll have still the $1,000 credit limit, but your available credit limit will be $900. You'll owe $100. When you pay that $100 back, then your available credit limit will match your total credit limit, which is $1,000. So generally, that's how it works, and that's why it's called a revolving line of credit. So cycling your credit limit is kind of the act of within a statement cycle. So basically you could say within a month. So whatever month you're watching this in, October 1st to October 31st, for example, your statement cycle, right? Going all the way up to $1,000, paying it off, paying it back in full, then doing it again multiple times, 2, 3 plus times, what have you, right? That's considered cycling your credit limit because you're running through the entire credit limit, which within the same statement cycle, versus how it normally works is that, you would pull from that credit limit throughout the statement cycle, and then when the bill comes, you would pay back what you've used, and it would go up to full again, like we covered in the beginning examples. That's what we mean by cycling the credit limit. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, there's usually like two main reasons, right? The first one is that maybe you just have a ton of spend coming up, and you need to, you want to keep using the same card, right? The other reason that you see more common, and this is one that I'm going through myself with U.S. Bank right now, is that sometimes banks, no matter what your credit standing is, no matter how high your credit score is, your length of credit history, they simply don't like to issue you a ton of credit limit at first. For whatever reason, sometimes we see if it's your first card with the bank, maybe they want to just try you out, so they'll put up, a small amount of money. They can go as low as $500. In my case, I got an American Express Blue Business Cash. They put it at $2,000, which is not a lot of money at all. I've been playing this game for quite some time. I think that's the lowest limit I've ever gotten. Chase likes to give me $3,000 on the business cards. U.S. Bank, in this case, with the business leverage card, even having about $16,000 on a cash plus and another, I think, 16 or so on a triple cash. When I got the leverage card, they gave me $3,000, which, depending on what you're trying to do, may or may not be a lot of credit limit. So, if you're trying to use this card to make large purchases, well, what are you really to do but kind of cycle through the credit limit? So my personal story that we'll walk through is, again, I got the business leverage card. At the time of recording, that intro offer was spend $7,500 in the first 150 days to get $750 back in a cash welcome offer. Now, of course, when you go after spend this big, you like to have it lined up with purchases coming up that you're going to make. And so, I had a few large purchases. Property taxes for one house were like $3,300 for the summer. Homeowners insurance, renters for that house as well was like $1,400, give or take, plus all the other odds and ends that you were going to use. I also had to do some work on the garage at that house as well, which came out to be like $3,800. It was basically very expensive, a month and a half, give or take. But that's why we get credit cards. So for U.S. Bank to give me this $3,000 credit limit, and me to hit all these purchases, you would either have to cycle through the credit limit, or you would have to space out your purchases between statements, which isn't really going to work because then you push out, the work that you need to do, and the project takes much, much longer. So for me, for my personal use, I cycle through the credit limit. Now, for our premises of our story, I didn't go all the way to $3,000 every single time. So we take a look at this property tax, for example, it's $3,300, plus you have a processing fee that the local counties always assess to it, a convenience fee, if you will. So I'd pay half of it on the card, wait till that posted, pay that off, bring it back to $3,000, and then pay the other half. And then to make the insurance payment, I'd have to do the same thing because there wouldn't be enough credit limit to do all of it. Of course, you can still pay in pieces, but it's much easier to take care of all of it in one swipe, in my opinion. So over the course of, I think it took me maybe 6 weeks to finish off this intro offer. Again, expensive month. I think I made 4 or 5 different payments to US Bank, which equated to over, I think, a statement and a half, honestly. And I didn't really have any issues personally. Now, this is one use case, one lender in particular. But for me, it worked. Now, other options that you have that sometimes work that we've talked about is if you have existing cards with the bank, you can phone in and you can move credit limit around. I have a whole video on that I can put down below for you. So for example, when I do this with Chase Ink cards, even though they give me $3,000 limit, what's fine is I have 2 other Chase Ink cards, so I can call in and move credit limit around as I need. Just a quick summary, the rules are basically you can't move personal to business and vice versa, but as long as it's like a Freedom to a Sapphire, an Ink to an Ink, you can do that even if it's, a Marriott card and an IHG card. As long as they're both personal and you're the primary signer, you can do that. However, US Bank, I learned, does not allow you to move credit limit, so, you kind of have to make a decision. Am I going to try to stretch this out over months and play it super cautious, or am I going to make the payments now, or, do the spend as needed? Now, overall, why is this potentially a bad thing? Well, it's potentially a bad thing because, again, you would think in a bank that everyone would be talking, all the systems will be talking. So one system would say, hey, we actually issue this person $500, $1,000 credit limit. Of course, they're cycling through it, but that's not really how it works. So they'll risk management, their algorithms will decide how much credit they're comfortable lending you. And then after that, there's automations in place looking for risky behavior. And someone churning and burning through credit limit could potentially be risky because you're operating outside of the parameters that they set for your account. Again, we can debate right, wrong, or indifferent, how you feel about what you're issued, but, that's kind of how it works. They're, the bank's saying, like, we're comfortable giving you, whatever, $3,000 a month, and you're using much more than $3,000 a month. We could see that as a risk. The other thing you can also run into is sometimes when you make multiple payments to a credit card company, that can also be seen as risk because you're likely doing it through ACH, and ACHs can be unwound after the fact later, so the bank is potentially still at risk. They see this card getting hit pretty hard and money coming in. Not every bank requires you to verify ownership of the account. I don't believe when you're linking an external account to pay. Some do, some don't, through micro deposits and things like that. So they could see it as a risk to them on that front as well. So that's really why it could potentially be risky overall. Now, again, as far as a list of issuers who care or don't, it's really hard to say. I think some we know care. I believe Capital One cares, but again, Capital One has historically targeted subprime for quite some time. I believe I've read American Express doesn't really care that much. Discover, I don't think cares, but again, it's really hit or miss. If I give you a list now, it could potentially change in the future based on data points. But that is how credit limit cycling goes. So overall, final thoughts, it's not something I'd try to do really, but at the same time, I'm not, I got this card, I need to use this card, so I'm going to go for it. I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing in the world, and the good news is I think it can easily be explained away. That just depends on, does the bank actually jump in, get scared enough to shut you down versus lock your account. So I think personally you'd have to really get egregious with it and do it consistently for a while for this to be an issue. But again, if you're trying to just hit these intro offers, I don't think it's going to be the worst thing ever, so I wouldn't strongly encourage you to keep doing it. But if you have to do it a few times, I think so be it. Now, the other thing here to note is that some banks are much quicker to post payments, I should say, than other banks. So, for example, one thing American Express and Citi do really well is if you have a linked bank account, you make a payment, that payment, at least for my Blue Business Cash and all my Citi cards, it's credited to the account instantly, which is helpful. It gets you back in the game, that much faster versus some of these other banks where you still have to, wait a little bit before the payment posts. In addition, prepaying the card, if you just wanted to simply have $3,000 or maybe you just send them $2,000, without a balance over that doesn't actually increase your available credit limit. It makes a statement credit for you, but it doesn't actually increase your credit limit the way you might think it would, so that's not really a viable option. So again, that's my experience doing it. Again, I've done it a time or two with the American Express Blue Business Cash and now the leverage card. I haven't had any issues, but again, we're talking about maybe 2 to 3 payments within a month to keep running through that credit limit. So again, it's not something I try to do, but at the same time, I'm here to do a job. My job is to get that intro offer. Sometimes they just make it a little more difficult than it needs to be. So that is what we mean by credit limit cycling. As I said, don't get crazy with it, but I don't think it'll get you kicked out initially as long as you're not overdoing it, only doing it on an as-needed basis. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this one, or how have you had to navigate your credit limit restrictions, so to speak. Of course, if you like this one, drop me a thumbs up down below. If you found it particularly interesting, consider subscribing to the channel. Because again, we're posting content just like this every single week, and of course, every Sunday, all the news you can use in the week that wasn't credit and finance, and of course, every single day over on profitablecontent.com, which is the channel's website where we the latest bank bonuses. We have news stories, and of course, if you need some more credit limit, we have credit card offers for you as well. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and talk to you very soon in the next one.